Welcome to Farm Year Daily, a field-forward podcast. I'm David Geiger, your host. I've been on Iowa TV and radio for the last decade, and I am excited to join you on this new podcast, Farm Year Daily. Today on the program, there was a delegation from Vietnam and Iowa this week wanting to check out farm business. Ralph Lenz of the Iowa Corn Promotion Board was there, and he joins us. Then we take a look at weather trends in May and the forecast for June with our state climatologist, Justin Glisan. Please be sure to like and follow the podcast and shoot it over to your friends, as well as check out our social media at Field Forward Pod. We'd love to have you join our community, making sure folks in Iowa are informed about what is affecting our farmers. This is Farm Year Daily. And joining us on Farm Year Daily, we're going to be talking about some delegations heading into Iowa. Ralph Lenz with the Iowa Corn Promotion Board, president of the Iowa Corn Promotion Board, is with us. Thank you so much for joining us on Farm Year Daily, Ralph. And tell us a little bit about what happened earlier this week.
Well, we had a delegation come in here from Vietnam, and there was over 50 of them in there. And anybody that had an office in their ag department was there. It was kind of a who's who on the ag side of Vietnam, and we had some really good discussions.
And beyond discussions, you guys also signed some memorandum of understanding as well.
That's correct. They come in here and they signed one for 900,000 metric tons of corn. Another one on DGGs, I think it was 225,000 metric tons. That was on the corn side of it. They signed a soybean one, pork and beef one also.
There were 5 in total, and some of the ones you mentioned there really focused on grain. Can you tell me why Vietnam is interested in Iowa grain products?
Well, they're a growing country. The average age over there is 30 years old, so they're going to be growing over the years. They do not raise enough food to feed themselves, so they need to buy some things to help them get along. They want to change their protein diet from fish to meat animals, and they're going to need corn to do that. So they're looking for a good source of corn. They realize Iowa produces a lot of corn, high quality corn, and that's why they started here.
Is that a pretty big number, or is that relatively normal when it comes to exports?
That's a pretty good size number for them. I want everybody understanding this is just an understanding. It will be negotiated with the federal government later on, but this is where their starting point is. And that's an increase from what they've been doing. And like I said, they want to change their diets over there. They want to go from a fish diet to a poultry pork diet. And of course, DGGs are good for both of those products. So, they're looking for a good source of DGGs, and Iowa happens to have more ethanol plants than any state in the United States. So we produce more DGGs. So that's where you're going to start, where the biggest supply is.
I appreciate you bringing that up in terms of memorandum of understanding is just that. It's something, hey, we understand each other. This is kind of what our intention is, and this is what we like to do. Could you tell me a little bit then about the promotion side on how we managed to get these 50 members of the Vietnamese delegation to come to Iowa specifically?
Well, at Iowa Corn, we're a member of the United States Grains Council. We're a big supporter of the Grains Council. They opened an office in Vietnam in 1994. So they worked through Grains Council to help steer them over here to the United States in the direction they need to go. And the Grains Council was very, very helpful in bringing them here to Iowa, realizing that, we're number one in corn production, DGG production, and it's a good place to start for them.
Ralph, I hear there was an interesting concern brought up when it comes to some of the trading that goes on between Iowa and Vietnam, and that involves DDGs. You were just talking about DDGs. Is there a barrier or a problem that both parties are facing right now on that trade?
Well, one requirement Vietnam has with us in trading when buying our DDGs, they want it fumigated over here in our country, so that when it arrives over there, there's no problems with insects or pests or anything in it. Sometimes it takes long enough and it sits on the dock long enough time by the time they inspect it, it has created some new activity has been hatched and started up. And when that happens, then they go ahead and they fumigate it themselves at our expense. We have to pay for that. We ship our DGGs in containers, where South America doesn't, and South America doesn't have this requirement of using fumigation on their DDGs. We'd like to have a level playing field on it because it is a cost to us and our makers, our manufacturers of the DDGs, and we'd like a level playing field on this thing and make it more feasible, palatable for all of us involved, so that maybe sometimes this thing doesn't get sprayed twice. With that, I brought the concern up, and they listened, and hopefully something comes out of this.
Beyond signing some, hey, we'd like to buy this much grain from you guys, another conversation that was had, I'm seeing, was also around ethanol itself, because Vietnam has a E5 rule that goes on, so 5% ethanol, and they're interested in potentially bumping that up to E10, I saw. Is that right?
That's correct, and that decision is going to be made in this year yet in 2025. So that would be a double in their usage of ethanol. And again, we're a big country producing ethanol. Iowa's number one in producing ethanol here in the United States. So why not go where the number one supply is? So that's why they're here. I really feel that they will up their mandate to E10 and will increase our exports of ethanol to the Vietnam. So it's a win-win for everyone here.
You mentioned the Grains Council opening up an office in Vietnam several decades ago now. And is ethanol been something that they've been heavily promoting recently?
Yes. Over there, everybody's worried about their environment, wanting to clean up their air quality. Vietnam has a lot of industry over there, so their air quality is not quite as good as they'd like to have it. And being a young population, they'd like to clean that air up. And that's why ethanol is one of the easier ways to go about it. So that's where they're headed in that direction right now.
We've talked kind of more broadly about this delegation that stopped by the Iowa State Capitol, but let's kind of go down to the person level, because you said there's a who's who of folks that was there and talking. Did you see any good relationships being fostered and maybe some new opportunities available after getting a chance to meet with so many folks from Vietnam?
Yeah, when it was all over, we went to a place and had lunch, and we sat amongst each other. So we got acquainted with each other and got to sit down with them, and they asked questions. I did an interview with the Vietnam press over there, and they're very much interested in making their agriculture production over there a lot better. They're looking for new ways to increase production, and that's one reason why they came to Iowa. They're looking for new ways to up their production and grow more food. So they want to share ideas. Besides buying things, they want to share ideas and use some of the practices that we do and educate their farmers and bring them up to speed, which we don't mind doing it.
Were there any concerns brought up by the delegation on potential barriers for trade moving forward as they try to foster these new opportunities and these new deals?
Well, they're concerned with the tariff situation right now, but they really want to be on the front end of that and work with the United States on it. And I'm sure that when we get done, there won't be much of a tariff, if anything, any tariff on it, because they ship a lot of products over there. Big in coffee is one of their big things that they export. And I'm sure they would like to get more of our share, and to do that, they're going to have to buy more of ours so we can buy more of theirs. So, it's a win-win for each of us, and everybody wants to work with each other, and it's a very good market for us, and we have a good relationship with them.
Overall, on a personal level, what would you say was your concluding thoughts as you met with the delegation and things wrapped up earlier this week?
I was very impressed with it because, they're here not just for, looking the country over. They're here actually to learn. They ask questions. They want to learn how we do things. They want to talk to farmers. They always want to talk to farmers and see what we're doing for practices, our sustainability things, and just general interest. Their yields aren't very good. They want to know how to increase yields, and I don't know. It's just a good relationship, and they're picking our brains, and we're kind of picking theirs, and hoping we can get more business out of it, which we will, because they truly do want to do business. They want to trust us as a trading partner.
Ralph Lenz, president of the Iowa Corn Promotion Board, here on Farm Here Daily. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you so much. This is Farm Here Daily, and we'll have more conversations on the way, but we're going to take a look at the market close for Wednesday. And there was some green on the board. July corn, a quarter penny higher at 4.38 and 3/4. September rising 4.5 cents at 4.28. Soybeans in July 4.25 cents more at 10.45, with August rising 4.5 cents, 10.38 and 3/4. Soybean meal in July, $2.60 a ton, in the green at $297.10. Wheat in July, 7.25 cents more, 5.43 1/4, with September rising 6.75 at 5.57 1/4. In the livestock market close for Wednesday, June live cattle up $2.42 a hundredweight, $218.40. August rising $2.60 at $212.35. Feeder cattle in August $2.65 a hundredweight higher, $303.87, with September rising $2.72 at $303.15. Lean hogs in June down 25 cents a hundredweight at $99.97, with July rising 45 cents at $105.02 a hundredweight. That is the Wednesday market close. This is Farm Here Daily. And joining us on Farm Here Daily, we have Justin Glisan, our state climatologist here in Iowa. Justin, always good to have you back on the program. And I wanted to talk a little about what we've seen over the last month of May and starting off the growing season here in Iowa. What's kind of your take? What's been the trends we've been seeing?
Hey, David. Yes, good to be with you as always. May, you think of the first half of the month, we were trending about anywhere from 4 to 6 degrees above average, and drier than normal for that first half. Then we shift into the second half, and our temperatures swung the opposite way, anywhere from 4 to 6 degrees below average. So you look at the statewide average temperature for the entire month, right on the average, the 30-year climatology, right around 60 degrees. So even with those ups and downs, we averaged out. Now, I think the headline has been the drier conditions that we've seen, particularly across southern Iowa. And May is the climatologically wettest month for the southern third of the state. So anywhere from 2 to 4 inch precipitation deficits across the southern part of the state. That's where we see drought, D1, moderate drought expand, also abnormally dry conditions. So overall, a drier month for the state. But things looked pretty good for the planting window, particularly that first half of the month when we had a lack of rainfall. And even when we had periods of wetter conditions, end of April, getting into the second half of May, the drier soil profiles were able to uptake that moisture. So it didn't keep planters out of the field more than a few hours or if a day or so.
I've noticed that as well. We've kind of had these slower, longer lasting rainfalls instead of very high volume events.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we had an event over the last 48 hours across the state, some severe weather in eastern Iowa. But those gentle rainfalls over several hours versus that thunderstorm driven rainfalls where we get those downpours, where a lot of that rain happens to run off. It doesn't soak into the profiles. So those are the exact types of rainfalls that we need moving forward to stave off drought expansion and intensification, but also to get moisture back into the profiles as vegetative demand increases with our row crops, but also the atmospheric demand as we get into the warmest time of the year.
I wanted to go back to some of the soil moisture notes you were making, because I was noticing over the last couple crop progress reports, it was being said that it kept falling in between two different categories. It kept dropping down to 24% short to very short, and then it would jump up to 34% short to very short. Could you tell me a little bit about how fast that swing can be and what that tends to mean?
Yeah, so windier conditions. Farmers have been talking about how windy it's been over the springtime. We just ended meteorological spring. Some of the windiest conditions that we've seen, particularly in March and April. But when you get into those drier periods with warmer temperatures, as we saw with the first half of the month, you're extracting soil moisture, particularly that topsoil moisture, relatively fast. And a few factors can come into play. Lower dew points, warmer temperatures, as I mentioned, of course, the lack of precipitation. but also windier conditions. All of those can lead to anomalously higher atmospheric demand, and that's where you can extract any moisture that you see or that is readily available at the surface.
Looking into the next few weeks, we are starting off June, getting into the summertime season. What are the trends that typically happen in Iowa for June rainfall and weather patterns?
Yep. So June is the wettest month for the northern 2/3 of the state, and for second wettest for the southern third of the state. So lots of rainfall. We should see rainfall every few days, thunderstorm-driven rainfall as we get into summertime. A lot of overnight convection as well, thunderstorms over the nighttime period. And what that results in is replenishment of soil moisture profiles, hopefully, climatologically. That's what we would like to see. Also, one thing of note is we're moving into July, which is the warmest month climatologically, and that's where we can see if we do get into a dry pattern, expansion and intensification of drought relatively fast. We call it rapid onset drought, or an intensification of seasonal drought conditions that we already have on the ground. Right now, we have about 10% coverage of moderate drought, a pocket in northwest Iowa, a pocket in southwest Iowa, and then a little bit over in eastern Iowa. So if you look at the climate outlooks for June as a whole, we are seeing a slight lean towards warmer temperatures, but also a more active storm track south of us. Think of the Gulf and mid-Atlantic states getting over into the desert southwest. So the monsoon is particularly important for the desert southwest in that they get a majority of their rainfall, annual rainfall, in 1 to 2 months. So we're seeing an elevated bullseye in the southwest, but also along the Gulf states. This could be a reflection of a more active Gulf tropical season, but also the storm track is locked further south. And one thing that we look at least agriculturally, is the flow of moisture off of the Gulf. This is our moisture gate into the upper Midwest. Thunderstorms don't drag their own precipitation or their own moisture with them. They look for moisture to feed off of. So when that Gulf moisture gate is open up into the upper Midwest, that's great. But when the southern states are drier, the land surface will extract that moisture as it moves north, and robbing us in the upper Midwest of that moisture. So with that wet pattern that we're seeing across the southern states with the Gulf flow off of it, we should see moisture get its way up into the upper Midwest. And looking at the short-term outlooks through the first half of the month, getting into the third week, we are seeing an elevated wet signal that's coupled with a warmer signal as well. So what that suggests to me is higher chances of thunderstorms, and those thunderstorms are what gives us the much-needed rainfall in June as the wettest month.
Justin, before I let you go, let's take a look globally at some of the weather patterns that we've seen and how they might impact us down the road. Have there been any changes since we last spoke?
Yep. So we think about those larger term climate drivers, the climate patterns that we see, particularly in the Pacific. We're still in that INSO neutral phase. And again, as we discussed a few weeks ago, as we move into the warmest time of the year through the growing season, there's a much less correlated factor from the phase of El Nino or La Nina, or where we are neutral conditions, given that thunderstorms drive our summertime behavior. Now, they could have an impact on the tropical season. Typically in La Nina years, we see less wind shear in the Gulf and the Atlantic, and hurricanes like to form in environments of the least amount of wind shear to get their towers higher up into the atmosphere, and that perpetuates the thermodynamics that keeps those systems together to make landfall. Another thing that we're looking at, though, is in neutral conditions, we have anomalously warm ocean temperatures in the Gulf and the Atlantic. So even in the absence of that La Nina phase, we are seeing higher probabilities of a more active tropical season, and these can have implications on the amount of moisture flow that we get into the upper Midwest. Also, where the Bermuda high sets up in the Atlantic and gives us a better idea if we're going to have more Atlantic landfalling hurricanes or more Gulf landfalling hurricanes. So those are the things that I look at in the climate models, in the longer term forecast models. So more on that as we get into the next several weeks as the tropics ramp up.
Definitely, I will follow up with you on that. Justin Glisan, our state climatologist here in Iowa, really appreciate having you on Farm Here Daily.
Thanks, David.
Thanks so much, Justin. This is Farm Here Daily, a Field Forward podcast. Thank you again for listening. And in order to continue to produce this type of local Iowa content, we would love if you joined our community. So follow the podcast, check out our social media channels at Field Forward Pod, and recommend it to your friends. Additionally, you can find me on social media at Geiger Reports. You can also see me on TV, Channel 13, WHO TV, every weekday in their morning and noon hour programs. Again, I am your host, David Geiger, and we'll be back again tomorrow, everybody.